Brock, and I'm interviewing my grandfather, Bob Bullen, for the Been There, Done That Grandparents' Day project. Okay, the first question is, how did your father fighting in World War II affect your childhood?
Well, World War II started in December of 1941. I was only a year and a half old, and my father went to war in 1943. So he was gone 2 years, and during that time, I saw him 3 times. We went to his training camp at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina, and we went to Philadelphia, and then again I really didn't see him the 3rd time till he came home right after the war. And he came home in the middle of the night after a phone call. He said he was home in Chattanooga and he was taking a taxi cab, and my mother and I got all excited. In the middle of the night, my father came home, and it was a great moment.
And the second question is, do you remember any of your freedoms as a little kid that are different from my freedoms?
Well, children today have more freedom than children did when I was growing up. School controlled you completely. They told you how to dress, how to wear your hair. You didn't have freedom of speech rights you do today, but it was much safer then. I could ride my bicycle anywhere I wanted to, and it was not a time where you worried about people grabbing you or somebody being mean to you. People even left their doors unlocked in the neighborhood.
And number 3 is, as a teenager, what were the activities you did with friends?
Well, I liked to play ball a lot, and we would hang out at the recreation center and play basketball in the winter and play baseball in the summer and ride our bikes. And if somebody had a car, well, we'd go out riding around in the car.
And number 4 is, how did you feel about segregation and how did it affect you?
Well, that's the way I grew up. Whites were separated from blacks, and that's just the way it was. I really didn't know any black people, except we had a maid, and I knew who the janitor was at school, and there were a couple of black families that lived about a mile from our house, and they had 2 boys that used to come up on the playground and play with us. People have a hard time understanding today that segregation meant that you were separated. So I just, as a child, and I didn't really know any black people.
And number 5 is, do you remember who you voted for the first time you voted?
Well, the first election that I was almost eligible for was 1960, when Kennedy ran against Nixon, but I was 20 years old, and back then you had to be 21 years old to vote, so I didn't vote again till, or the first time till 1962, and that was a local election for mayor and city council and positions like that, and I don't remember who I voted for, but I know this, it was a Democrat.
And number 6 is, were you ever drafted to fight in any war?
No, I wasn't. I was called up for the draft, but because I had bad eyes, I was rejected, and I didn't have to go to war.
And number 7 is, what do you remember from your childhood about World War II?
I remember many things about World War II. We would go to my grandmother's house in Dalton, Georgia, and the troop trains would come through. That's where you had a train transporting a lot of soldiers, and the train would stop in town, and all the townspeople would come down and try to give food and sandwiches to the soldiers on the train, but the military police, with their helmets on and their armbands on, would not let the troops come off the train, but there would be a lot of talking and exchanging and excitement, but the soldiers could not get off the train, but people gave them pies and cakes and things because it was a long time being on the train to wherever they were going. It was an exciting moment.
And number 8 is, what do you remember about first seeing or getting a television?
Well, I grew up listening basically to the radio, and the first television was at my grandmother's, who lived in Dalton, Georgia, just south of Chattanooga, and she was the first one to get a television in our family. And Atlanta station would broadcast just about all the way to Dalton, but it would not carry. The waves would not carry to Chattanooga, but the next year we got a television, and the funny thing was that sometimes the station would come in and other times it would fade out, and we would all run into the room when the television was coming in. Then all of a sudden it'd fade out, and then we'd have to wait till it came back on again. So it was really kind of ridiculous.
Number 9 is, did you have any friends in the civil rights movement?
Well, again, the movement was all about mixing blacks and whites and giving blacks the same opportunities that whites had. So no, I didn't have any friends in that, but I was fortunate. My first teaching job was in Atlanta, Georgia in 1964, and I was assigned to a high school that was a central or focal point for integrating students in Atlanta, Georgia, and that was quite an experience because our school ended up 95% black and with an all-white faculty, and I taught black children, and they were really good, and that was a good experience for me. I had 7th graders mostly, and then I had one class of 9th and 10th graders, and that was a great experience for me. And for those black children, we were the first white teachers that they had ever experienced.
And number 10 is, what historical events impacted your life the most?
Well, probably too. The Vietnam War, which started in the early 60s and carried on into the 70s, greatly changed America, changed society. It divided America in many ways and caused a lot of dissension and disruption and protesting. And I just think it changed the way people looked at the government. And also the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and 65 changed things because segregation really started to end then. You would meet black people, you would see black people being able to go in the same restaurants you did, to ride anywhere on the bus, to go in any hotel they wanted to go in any amusement park they wanted to go in the same swimming pools they wanted that you were going in, and so that dramatically changed life.
Okay, well that's all. Thank you for watching.
Well, I'm delighted to have been interviewed by one of the most gorgeous little 5th grade girls in all of the state of Tennessee.